Hey guys, it's Kevin, my review for this week's episode of Survivor 47, Episode 2, Epic Girl Boss Move, and yeah, I was really excited for this episode. The first season premiere, I thought, did a really good job of just kind of laying everything out, giving us a sense of where all these tribes are and the different dynamics going on and setting up some really good potential conflicts. I thought that the first tribe in particular was a really strong one. Everything we got with Ngata I thought was just really well handled. I really like the new idol system and stuff like that. And, you know, I really like the way they utilized those 2 hours. And this episode, I thought, honestly, might have been even better than the first one. I think there was a lot that I really liked about this episode. A lot, particularly, I think there's was a lot of great moments in this episode. The tribal, in particular, was honestly the exact kind of thing I get excited for when it comes to Survivor. And just in general, I think the season is off to a really great start so far. So we're just going to go ahead and just jump right into it. Okay, so the one thing that I will say right off the bat with this episode that I'm liking a lot about this season is that they really are just doing a better job with not focusing so heavily on one tribe and then the others not getting enough focus. There is an issue in this episode with focus, and we'll talk about that, but when it comes to at least two of the tribes here, I feel like we got just enough, and especially when it comes to Tuku, I think we have a much better picture of what this tribe really looks like, because the way things were painted last week, it very much seemed like Sue was the one in control of things, and, you know, she was pulling in Gabe, she had Caroline on her side, and, you know, things were going really well there, and then there was this potential for, like, TK came back and everybody was, you know, all over TK. Everybody wanted to work with him. All the guys were going crazy and, you know, it seemed like they were going to, like, bro down. But then you had Gabe who found the idol and didn't tell TK about it. And so there was a lot of good tension there. But it does seem like that wasn't necessarily the way things were on this tribe. The dynamic of what this tribe was is completely different from what we really saw in the edit last week. Now I feel like I have a much better idea of things because, truthfully, TK is really the one that at least thinks that he's, like, in charge of everything. He wants to form this alliance with, like, Kyle and Gabe, and he also wants to try to pull in Tiyana, and he feels like this could be the group that he kind of wants to ride things out with, and you can see that he has a little bit of hesitation with Gabe, just because Gabe has become far too erratic considering, you know, what happened last time with him not doing a very good job of hiding the fact that he had the idol. TK's very much onto him in that way, and I thought this was going to be, like, the big story here, that Gabe was going to be this pariah of the tribe, everybody was going to be after him, and I could not have expected the direction that this went in. Because for TK in particular, wow, I mean, everything we get with TK in this episode is exactly what I exactly what I hope to see in some kind of downfall in Survivor, because holy shit, I could not have predicted the way that things went down here, and I think they do a really good job of just laying everything out when it comes to TK, because he brings the other two together. You can see that Tiyana is kind of unsure whether or not she wants to kind of join up with this group. She doesn't like the fact that there's a bromance going on, but she's pulled into it, and it seems like a lot of this was due to Kyle, and I will say, I think Kyle is, like, a big wild card here, where he's somebody that seems to have really good personal relationships with the majority of his tribe. He's someone who is very sensitive, and he really he's very sensitive towards people's feelings, and he just seems to care about everybody in the game, and I think that's really going to take him far. Like, I do feel very good about Kyle at this point, and out of the guys on the tribe, particularly after this episode, I feel like he's going to last the longest. I just really feel like that's what's going to happen. I feel like he has a really good chance, especially there's certain things he does in this episode that I think are particularly strong from him, and I think in general this was a pretty pretty good episode for Kyle. I do feel like maybe things can go downhill, but compared to other people on his tribe, I honestly think he might be okay. But basically, they do decide to all come together, and later on, TK ends up having this meeting with his tribe mates and kind of circulates the idea of, kind of spawns the idea of who the target should be this week, and immediately you just see the issue with TK in this alliance is that he thinks that he is doing something where like he's pitching an idea and he's kind of trying to tell everyone what direction to go in, but you can see that he has this dominance and this control and this kind of need for control where he wants to be the one to dictate pretty much everything. You know, he asks them and right off the bat he says Sue needs to go and really doesn't give them any other options. I mean, Tiyana does bring up Caroline, but it doesn't even seem like he's interested in doing that. He just immediately goes right to Sue, talks about how Sue is somebody that he doesn't really feel like is talking to many people and isn't in a great spot, and Liz, you can imagine my surprise when I'm hearing this, considering that the last episode portrayed Sue in such a different light, but admittedly, TK was not around for those conversations, so it very well could have been like Sue is somebody that is going to go far, but at this point in time, she's not really in a great spot. And the thing about TK during these conversations is that he just isn't really letting anyone else give their input. It's very much just like, this is what I want to do, this is what we're doing, you're down for it, okay, as long as you're down for it, that's what matters. Like, I just don't think he did a very good job of trying to get everybody's input, and especially, yes, I get it that you're in a majority, but if you want to keep that majority together, you have to make everyone's voice feel heard, and I don't feel like TK really did that here. He wanted to clearly be in control of everything, and you can just see how immediately this is going to be a big problem. And for Gabe in particular, he is really getting annoyed. He doesn't really trust TK, especially after what happened in the last episode, and he already is kind of shifting loyalties. He instead is feeling much better with Sue and Caroline, and I think this is a really interesting dynamic because one, you see that Sue is the person that, you know, Gabe seemed like somebody that, you know, he wanted to work with Sue, and it's great to see that the two of them are working closely here, but now Caroline also is on his side, and Caroline is very unsure whether or not to trust Gabe at this point, but he ends up showing her his idol, and that kind of is what ends up kind of winning her over and being like, okay, maybe now we can try to work together, and I really like this dynamic. I mean, I did not expect for the three of them to really be an alliance of sorts, but I'm very much down for it. I feel like it's one of those things where the three of them are coming together and no one's really going to suspect that it's going to happen. I think Sue already just seems to be a character that I think is going to go far. She's gotten a lot of content. There's a lot of great moments from her in this episode. I just really feel like that's what's going to happen. And then Caroline, I'm honestly not sure. I do get the sense that Caroline is not going to go super far. Just based on her edits, a lot of it is based around Sue and how much she trusts her and things like that. There is a little bit about her input with Gabe, but I just don't feel like we know enough about Caroline, so I just feel like she's not going to go as far. But again, I really like this three. I like the idea of them coming together. I like seeing Gabe and him going against TK. Like, this is such an interesting dynamic already. So Gabe is someone who you can tell that, like, this is his core alliance at this point. He even talks about wanting to sit at the end with Sue and Caroline. I don't think that's going to happen, but if it does, I mean, we just saw the start of it, so that could be interesting. We've seen a lot of tribes getting to the end together lately. It happened in 44, it happened in 45, it almost happened in 46, and then not really, but that was kind of the one that broke the streak. But we've seen it be very successful lately, and I think if Gabe is able to recover from what happens later on in this episode, I'm very worried for him moving forward. I do think there's a possibility this three could just end up running the rest of this tribe, but we'll have to see how things turn out. But the other big thing to point out with Tuku is there is a scene on the beach later where Sue and Caroline, they're just trying to get some rest. They're really just trying to sleep here. It's been a long day. They're trying to just kind of chill. It's very hot out and they just want to relax. And TK TK just won't stop talking. He is just going on and on and on about whatever. He's saying bro like every 50 seconds, and you can just see how irritated Sue is. And I give her a lot of, to her credit, she does a really good job of kind of just masking her annoyance in this moment, and just how much she is detesting just how much of an ego that he has. And I mean, I thought this was a really funny moment. There's a moment where TK and Kyle end up leaving, and she actually ends up expressing to Tiyana just how frustrated she is by TK and how he just won't shut up, and how she's just really annoyed by how he's constantly just going on and on about everything. And there's a moment here where Tiyana is talking about how she agrees, but at the same time, she really wants to work with this 3. So it kind of puts her like dead set in the middle, where on one hand, she wants to work with the 3 guys, but then the other hand, she has Sue who feels good with her. And I thought it was really interesting the way that this went down. And I thought overall, this was just a really interesting conflict and just painted a much more interesting picture of Tuku. I thought Tuku was mainly just going to be like Sue running the tribe, and it was going to be like Gabe versus TK. And it ends up being much more complicated than that. And I thought this episode did a really good job of just diving headfirst into all the different conflicts going on here. So now we're going to go ahead and talk about the tribe that was really the main characters of the last episode. And I think easily, even though, no, they're not as prominent in this one, the dynamics going on within Gata and the conflict that's going on there might be the thing that right now I am the most interested in. And most, if not all of that, is really due to the person that I think right now might potentially be like the frontrunner of this game, and that's Sam, who I am just so impressed by the way that he is playing this game right now. The one thing I will say that I thought was kind of shocking, and I feel like maybe they're doing away with this season, is we don't see the reaction to the tribal from Gata. We don't really see, then they've been doing this a lot lately, where the episode usually starts off with the tribe that got voted out, and we see their reactions, and we see how they felt about the tribal, and we don't get that in this episode. The episode instead started off with the Lavo tribe, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but I thought stuff like that actually is a nice change of pace for the show. I feel like you're running the risk when you're doing the same thing of it becoming very generic and kind of all feeling the same, and I like that they are actually trying to do something a little bit different here. And I think, they still were able to give us a good idea of what's going on with Gata without needing to see the reaction to the tribal, so I actually don't have an issue with them not showing it here. But the big thing to talk about really, again, is just everything going on with Sam and what he's doing. Because right now, Sam is kind of in this position, and I talked about this last week. He was hyping Andy a lot up at the tribal, talking about his determination and just how fearless he was, and how, he had this courage, and how much he, admired him for that. And I said it, I feel like Sam is going to try to be in Andy's corner. And my God, is he ever. Because you can see not only is Andy feeling better after John is now gone, but Sam has basically convinced Andy into feeling like the entire tribe is now behind him, and that they don't have any fear about him at all. They're clapping while he's opening coconuts. They're actively listening to what he's saying, and I think that this is really good strategy, the way that they all have kind of lulled him into this false sense of security. They know that he's somebody that is going to act out, and he might end up lashing out at them, and this is preventing another situation like that from happening. So I feel like they're managing him very well, but it also makes it so Andy is now someone that is much more inclined to tell people what's going on, and you really do see that here. But the big thing is now Andy's kind of in this place where, despite the fact he is feeling solid, he also wants to make sure that he's protected at the next tribal. He wants to make sure that things end up going his way and that he isn't the next person voted out. And so he's having this moment with Sam where the two of them are kind of bonding and talking about how much they, are happy to have each other in the game and how much they want to go far together. And Again, what I love about Sam here is that he really has planned it in such a way to where he can find a way to bond with Andy. Meanwhile, the other girls, Anika, Sierra, and Rachel, they are all off looking for the idol. And, I think this is really great from Sam because not only does this make him now have trust with the girls where it's like, okay, you guys can go look for the idol. I'm going to go spend time with Andy. But it also gets Andy to feel a lot closer to Sam. And we'll talk about that a little bit, but basically Sam ends up going off to eventually find the girls, and this gets Andy to start idol searching. He does end up coming across the idol, and in probably, I think, one of the most interesting moves I've seen in any season, instead of picking it up immediately, Andy actually decides to just leave it. And this actually isn't the worst move in the world. I do think on paper, this is probably a good thing to do because if you're someone who people are constantly worried are idol hunting, you can kind of spin it as, oh, I wasn't idol hunting, I was just going off, and then the idol's still there and then they won't know. But you're also now running the risk of somebody else grabbing that idol before you, and that's kind of what ends up happening because the second that Sam realizes that Andy has gone off, he wants to make sure that he has that idol. He knows he's very worried of what's going to happen, and Sam does end up finding Andy, and Andy is right near the path of the idol, and Sam actually tells Sam how he's feeling and that the idol was there and that, they can kind of find this idol together, kind of shows him the spot that it's in. And I mean, this is really great work from Andy, but it's even better work from Sam because what Sam decides to do with this is just full chaos. And this is what I like about Sam is that he is just all about chaos, but he's doing it in such a subtle way to where I don't think anybody really is going to recognize the way he's playing right now, because what he decides to do is go on this idol hunt with Anika. The two of them are going to try to find this idol together. They end up finding it, but then also realize that the key is there, and Sam doesn't want Anika to be the only one to be in the know about it, so he ends up telling Sierra, and Sierra is not really sure how to, and you can see that Sierra is kind of in this place where she's feeling close to him. Eventually, this ends up going back to Rachel because he doesn't want Anika to tell Rachel, even though Anika already told Rachel. So again, I think just the way he's handling his tribe and all the different relationships he's forming is really great stuff. He is very much the one running things right now. And while maybe there's going to be an edit that tells me otherwise, right now at least, it does seem like that is what's going on. Everybody feels good with Sam. Everyone's inclined to tell him things. Everybody wants to pull him in. And I just feel like right now, Sam is one of the odds-on favorites to win this game. I know it's very early on in the season, but it really does feel like that might end up being the case. Now, I felt the same way about Hunter last year when things started off. It felt like Hunter was in a really good spot, and then we know how things end up going. So it doesn't mean that's going to be the same for Sam this entire season, but right now, I really do like the way that he's playing. I like how coy he's being with things, and particularly the way he handles things with Andy in this next conversation. When Andy finds out the idol is missing, Sam's reaction, the way that he seems generally shocked and concerned and really tries to, be there for Andy, I thought was just so great. And, to see, and Andy is now feeling so good with Sam. He wants to pull him in. And what I like about Sam as well is that he doesn't try to discard Andy here. Andy tells him that he's worried that one of the girls took it, and Sam's like, oh, wait, he's after them. He's not after me. Well, why don't I just try to pull him in? Going as far as to literally tell Sierra that, hey, I don't want Sam to go. I actually want Sam to be in our corner. He does end up getting the idol, and what I think is really interesting about this season when it comes to the idols is that they have this system where it's either good for 1 round, 3 rounds, or the entire game. Most of the tribe members, at least so far, are deciding to grab it for that 1 round. And I feel like a big reason for that is because of the fact that the idols weren't played at all last season. And I feel like Survivor just really wants them to be played, and they feel like this is their solution into doing that. It does seem like it's working because, we've already had an idol play, but of course we'll get into that. He does decide to take this idol for the 1 round, and he tells Sierra that he's thinking of maybe even using the idol on Andy. And because he doesn't want Andy to go, he wants it to be one of the girls. And what I like about Sierra in this moment is that she says that she doesn't really feel great about Andy. He's very erratic, he's very unpredictable, but yet she feels good with Sam, and therefore she wants to work with him. She wants to pull in Andy because Sam trusts him. And again, that just tells me how well insulated Sam is on his tribe. But the real question here is, what is Sam's actual plan? Because he says to Sierra that he doesn't want it to be Andy, and he's worried about going in a tribe with 3 other girls that he would be easily picked off. So what does he really plan to do here? I think personally, it's probably going to be Rachel. That's the direction I think he's headed in. Rachel was the one that he doesn't seem as close with. He did talk to Anika. He did talk to Rachel, but it does seem like maybe he's worried about her. It could potentially be Anika as well, but I feel like him and Anika, it seems like they're closer. So honestly, I don't really know, but this is so interesting to me. I really just want to see Gata go back to tribal because this is such an interesting dynamic. I really am interested to see how this does play out moving forward. Is Sam going to get his way? Are they going to go back to tribal? Is he going to be able to actually use this idol on Andy? I mean, that could be such great television, and it's so great. I generally just need to see it happen. So yeah, I mean, I'm all in when it comes to this tribe. I think there's so many interesting possibilities going on here. Anika and Rachel also seem to be kind of a tight duo at this point, and with Sierra kind of veering away from them and going more towards Sam, but still maintaining her relations with them. There's so many directions that this tribe could end up going. So yeah, right now, if you had to ask me the tribe I'm most interested in, it probably is this one. I think the dynamic here is so interesting. I'm really intrigued now to see like what Andy's actual plan is and if he's going to be able to maintain his positioning, because it kind of is like the golden positioning right now. You have all the girls on your side, but you now have Andy who's basically telling you everything and is willing to, pull you into anything that he wants to and is willing to divulge any information that he ends up getting. It comes your way. But then you also have Sierra, who is your closest ally, and despite the fact she doesn't want to work with Andy because you do, she is actually going to consider it. And so, yeah, I think Sam is just really sitting pretty at the moment, and I'm generally just really impressed by his gameplay, and we'll just have to see the way things continue to go. But right now, if you had to ask me the person who I am the most impressed by game-wise, it probably is Sam. I just really like the way he's directing things. I like the play. I like that he's thinking long-term in terms of what he wants to do. I like that he's not, it'd be so easy for him to just cast Andy aside and work with the girls, but recognizing that Andy actually is good for his game, I think is actually going to take him relatively far. And so I'm just really interested to see how all of this ends up developing, because right now, Gata is easily the tribe I am the most interested in. So now let's go ahead and talk about Lavo, which this is really my biggest issue with this episode, is that there's really not a lot to talk about. I don't feel like we got enough with them in this one. We do have some stuff going on, but right now, I just don't think I have as clear-cut of an idea, but also things are kind of not as interesting on their tribe right now, and I think, and it's kind of unfortunate because I think that there's a lot of intrigue and sort of uncertainty on that tribe, especially with the direction things end up going. Basically, this is actually how the episode starts off. Rome, as we know, was trying to find the idol. He wasn't able to get it until later that night, and he ends up searching for the path. But he doesn't want to do it alone. He wants to try to pull somebody into it because he's really worried at how suspicious it's going to look. So he pulls in Teeny, who I gotta say, I said last week I thought Aysha was the one running things. No, I think it's very easy to tell that Teeny is the one in control of this tribe right now. I mean, everybody seems to be good with them. Similar to Sam, everybody wants to pull Teeny into things and just wants to have them on their side. And I think that, this episode really just showcases just how good of a spot Teeny's in right now. I think right now they are probably the person that is going to go the farthest on this tribe and that I feel the most confident in, and would be the most surprised if they end up getting voted out, because right now I just think Teeny's in a really good spot. Basically, Rome does share this with Teeny, lets them in on the fact that this is the path and that this is the idol, and Teeny is very annoyed with Rome here because, as you know in the last episode, they've already planned to just, form this army of sorts to vote Rome out. They want Rome out of this game. They feel like Rome is just annoying everybody. They're very suspicious of him. They don't really know where he lies. This doesn't just apply to Teeny. It really is the rest of the tribe. And so they're now annoyed that Rome has an idol and now can't be voted out. And so they do decide to share this information with Kishan and play it off really well. Ends up telling Kishan pretty much everything. But what I really like in this moment is that when Rome comes back, Kishan and Teeny make it seem like the two of them were just having a conversation and that they were just talking about the four of them working together, Rome and I believe Aysha. I'm not sure what the four ends up being. That's the one thing I'm just not really sure of, is where is the alliances right now? Is it Aysha, Teeny, Rome, and Kishan? Or is it Kishan, Rome, Teeny, and Soul? Or is Genevieve in there? Genevieve's not even in this episode, so I really do feel like Genevieve's gonna be the person voted out at this point, because we're just getting like nothing from her. Like, she's almost like in the last episode she didn't have much, but this episode she's completely purpled, and that really is starting to concern me that if they end up going to tribal, I really do feel like Genevieve's going to be voted off, because we know next to nothing about her right now, and it doesn't seem like she's including anything. It doesn't really seem like anybody trusts her that much, so I really don't know. I mean, yeah, we had that moment with like Genevieve and Kishan, but like I don't really know if that's going to go anywhere, because we just don't really see much of Genevieve in this episode, so I don't really know. But Rome is like very well aware of what Teeny is doing at this point, and now really doesn't know if they can trust them moving forward, just knowing that they ended up, already leaking out this information. And Rome is also like very disappointed that there's like multiple steps to get the normal idol. So again, he just grabs the idol for one round. And I think it's just such an interesting idea that all of the idols could already be out of the game in just a couple rounds. I think that's so interesting, because you can tell that they are very desperate for idols to be played. They want that moment, and now it just seems like we have another extreme where instead the idols are just gonna be played immediately, and I think that's kind of funny. But yeah, Rome now has this idol, and so now this tribe is in a bit of a conundrum, because they can't really do much at the moment, because the person they want to vote out has this idol and could play it at any moment. So it's a really interesting dynamic, and really kind of makes you unsure as to the direction that things are going to go in. The rest of what we get with this tribe is really not that much. There's an extended montage of just everybody talking about how cocky Rome is, how he's talking a lot about sports, and he's talking about like Michael Jackson moves, how he wants to be a part of like Jeff's podcast, and everyone just really seems to be annoyed with him. And you really can see that Rome is somebody they want to vote off. The only other thing to really talk about on Lavo is with Kishan. He does have this really good confessional where he talks about how Rome is this like big character and he's playing this like super out in front game, whereas Kishan is trying to be a lot more low-key, and it seems like that's actually working out a lot better for him, because there's a moment where Rome wants to be the one to make fire, Rome wants to be the one to get all the camp supplies, and Kishan actually does end up making the fire successfully, and so it really does make me feel like Kishan's gonna be somebody that goes pretty far here. I feel pretty good about his chances. I feel good about Teeny, but virtually everybody else on this tribe, I have no idea where they're going to go. I think Aysha's in an alright spot, but there's not really a lot with Aysha in this episode. Soul and Genevieve, though, I just don't feel like they're going to be here that long. I just don't feel like that's going to be the case. I don't feel great about their edit. I don't feel like I know enough about them. And just Lavo in general is the tribe that right now, I don't feel like I understand the dynamic enough, and I feel like until they end up going to tribal, it's just gonna be like this for a while. They can't vote off Rome, they want to vote out Rome, and they need to try to go in a different direction because they know he has this idol. So yeah, it's not the most interesting. I mean, I like the fact that the person they want to vote off has an idol, but it dilutes a lot of the tension when it just feels like there's all this movement that could be going on, but because he has the idol, there's not much they can do. They're not going to tribal. And so much of the content is framed around Rome that I just feel like we're not getting to know anybody else right now, and I do feel like that is hurting this tribe. So while I think the other two tribes are doing a better job of laying everything out, this is the one tribe that I just don't think they're doing a great job of covering so far, and I hope next episode we get a much better in-depth look at what Laval really does look like, because right now it just seems like there's things that they want to happen, but they can't really do anything about it. You have like Teeny, who's in a great spot. You have Kishan, who seems to be in a good spot. Rome, everybody wants foot out, but can't do anything about it. And then you have Aysha, Sol, and Genevieve, and I have no clue where they are. I know that Aysha and Teeny are tight, but like Genevieve and Sol, I have no idea where they stand right now. But we'll really just have to see the direction that things end up going, because right now, like I said, I just don't feel like I know enough about this tribe right now. Some good moments. I enjoy what we're getting with Rome and just how annoyed everybody is becoming with him. I think he's going to be a really fun character to watch, but right now, I just don't feel like I know enough about what's going on in this tribe. But now that we've talked about all three tribes, let's go ahead and talk about this immunity challenge, because it honestly was a really fun one. I thought that there was a lot of interesting tension. There was a lot of tension, a lot of suspense with this tribal, with this challenge, and I thought there was just some really interesting stuff to talk about. The challenge itself is basically just everybody has to work together. They got to bring this heavy bag of rice from an ocean platform, and there's like one tribe member that has to try to maneuver the key through a maze, and they're going to cut open the bag of rice and retrieve a ball, and then three of them then have to work together to try to get the ball across a track, and the first two tribes that do that are going to win immunity, as well as like a fishing kit. And there was a lot of great moments here. I love the moment where you could see that Gata was like really bickering over the direction things were going in. Anika and Sam especially were getting into it, but yet even though the two of them seem to be the most dysfunctional, they actually are able to win immunity before everybody else. I thought that was a really fun moment. And then seeing Tuku and Lavo and the two of them just really battling it out and trying to figure out who it's going to be, where Lavo ends up winning immunity here, and this does not end up going very well for Tuku. So the challenge itself was really fun. There were definitely some great moments here, but what happens afterwards, that's really where things get exciting here, because TK is really mad. And he's not just devastated, he's pissed. He is pissed at the fact that they lost, and he doesn't understand why anybody else would be smiling at this point, basically saying that they should not feel like they should not feel happy about losing. And this is like the worst timing to say this, because as literally Tiyana is smiling as he is saying this, and you can just see it's not really going great for TK, and this is where I really start to not like TK. I feel like he has this really big ego, and I don't think he's like intentionally trying to be mean, but he says a lot of stuff in this episode that's both really just kind of condescending, but also comes off a little bit misogynistic, and you really do see that throughout this moment. You could see that Tiana's like really upset about this, and I thought that, again, it set up some really interesting tension, specifically because Tiyana's supposed to be in an alliance with TK and, Gabe and Kyle right now. And so already having TK, call that out, I thought was just a really interesting moment. Sue has this moment where she kind of talks about how, because of the fact that Tiyana was like so pissed about it, that maybe she'll be much more inclined to actually vote out TK. So, I mean, again, there was a lot of intrigue heading into this actual discussion of what's going to happen. The only other thing to talk about, though, is Rachel. There's this really funny moment where before all the tribes end up heading back, Jeff notices that Rachel is like stuffed her pockets with rice, and basically, everyone's like calling her out for it. TK says that she's a shoplifter, which I thought was pretty funny, and he admires the effort, but yeah, apparently it's a rule that you can't stuff your pockets with rice. I always say in challenges, if there's no rule against it, then there shouldn't be any sort of penalty, because they never said that wasn't something you could do, and there's always loopholes and things like that. I don't necessarily I don't necessarily say, like, you should look for loopholes, but if there's something you want to do that seems like it might be okay, just go ahead and do it. This is one of those things where it's like, there was nothing that said you couldn't stuff your pockets with rice, but at the same time, probably not the best thing to do, considering that, like, the rice is supposed to be for everybody and not just for you. But either way, I thought this was a fun moment. I really like the back and forth between Jeff and Rachel here, and I thought it was definitely one of the most entertaining moments of the entire episode. So from this point forward, this is really where things get juicy, where, you know, there's this conversation with Tiyana, and she's really hurt by what's going on. She expresses to Kyle that this is something that is just really bothering her. She doesn't like the way that she was talked to. Kyle even brings up the fact that he as well is really annoyed by TK and doesn't really like the fact that he, you know, said that. Brings up the fact that, like, yes, when people lose, it sucks, but, like, he still tries to just show good sportsmanship, and TK's not doing that. And TK can, ends up walking in. He can tell that they're talking about him, and Kyle, honestly, I was really impressed by here. He actually goes right to TK and kind of tells him that, like, yeah, Tiyana's a bit upset. You should try to apologize to her. TK has no interest in doing this because in his mind, he didn't do anything wrong and he doesn't want to try to apologize to her. Kyle does try his best here to try to make amends between the two of them. TK does, then try to kind of clarify to Tiyana what he meant, that he wasn't specifically talking about her and he was trying to talk about the tribe overall, and that if she's going to have a concern with him, she needs to address it to him correctly, directly, and not try to talk to everybody else. And I don't know. I mean, I appreciate the fact that he told her that he didn't mean to make her feel this way, but I just feel like the way he went about it was just a little bit too demanding. I feel like he wants to be in control. He wants to be this, like, domineering type personality, and just the way that he was talking to her, it just still felt like there was this, like, condescending type nature to it. And, I like the fact that he tried to do what he could to, like, smooth things over with her, but I feel like he could have done it in a much better way. Shouldn't have told her, like, oh, I don't want you to go behind my back and tell other people. Like, in that situation, like, what you do if you're TK, just admit that you're in the wrong. Like, even if you don't believe it, you just have to tell Tiyana, like, yes, I should have thought about you. It was the heat of the moment. I'm sorry about that. And that's not really what he does. He does try to clarify to her, and I think in his head he is making it better. But because he's still telling her, like, directly what she needs to not do, he's still coming across as very domineering, very controlling, and it's making her feel a lot smaller. It's making her feel like he's talking down to her, even if that's not his intention. And I definitely did understand Tiyana's perspective here, but despite the fact that there is all this tension going on, it does seem like at this point that TK, Kyle, Tiyana, and Gabe, they are still going to vote out Sue in this round. TK even mentions that Sue doesn't really talk to anybody and that they don't really get much conversations from her. But that's not really what's going on, because Gabe has his own plan, and his plan really shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. At this point, he doesn't really have much of a reason to want to align with TK moving forward. He wants to be in Caroline and Sue's corner. He wants to show them that he is on their side, and so his plan essentially is to blindside TK at this tribal, and there's a couple different ways to maybe go about it. On one hand, Caroline, Sue, and Gabe could just vote together, and they could make sure that the vote ties, and then if it ties, they can try to pull in Tiyana, or they could try to go to rocks. That is something else that they suggest as a possibility. Caroline's not really sure if this is going to happen, but Gabe and Sue are a little bit more inclined to think that's going to happen. But by all accounts, the one thing that everybody can agree upon is that Tiyana is absolutely the swing vote here. If Tiyana ends up voting with them, then it ends up being TK, but if Tiyana votes the other way, then it ends up being Sue. So again, just a lot of very interesting conflict here. And you can see that Tiyana is generally very conflicted because she wants to work with the guys. And this is why, like I said, I feel like Kyle is in a really good spot because her main concern at this point is Kyle. The fact that she knows that TK and Kyle are close, and she's worried that if she pisses off TK, she's also going to upset Kyle, and she really wants to try to do what she can to refrain from that. But then on the other hand, she does really not like the way the TK spoke to her and doesn't really want to work with him in the game moving forward. So you can see that she generally is conflicted here, and I really like this. I like that the vote could go literally any other way. It's like directly split at this point, and it really is unclear what is going to happen until we go into tribal. So there was just a lot gearing up for this to be a really exciting tribal. But we get into the tribal, and yeah, it really did not end up disappointing here. I thought that this was just really exciting to watch. Right off the bat, you have Sue like directly calling out TK here, talking about how, you know, she felt like TK, there was like a bro down happening, and there was all this, you know, these guys working together, and, you know, it made her just really annoyed that that's what was going on. And Kyle, I think, responds the best here, where he kind of says that, like, yes, the guys are working together, but he felt just as good with the girls. And then TK makes things, really digs himself a deeper hole here, where he talks about how nobody really has talked to Sue. Sue hasn't had good conversations with anybody. Sue also mentions that, like, TK hasn't tried to talk to her. And that's the thing, like, things like this, it's always going to be a two-way street. If you don't feel good with somebody and you don't feel like they're having conversations with you, that's also because you haven't tried to approach them. You haven't tried to pull them in. You haven't tried to improve that relationship. And that really is the case with TK. He was so focused on Kyle and Tiyana and Gabe and feeling like he had the four of them locked, he didn't feel like he needed to do any work with Caroline and Sue. But the thing is, like, you need to, because at any moment a situation like this could end up happening. And I know at this point TK is feeling high and mighty, like he's, you know, running everything, but he needed to recognize in this moment that the four of them, like, yes, they are his priority, but there's two other people that are on this tribe that are just as valuable. And at some point, you might need their vote. You might need them on your side. And he hasn't even really tried to make an effort with Sue or Caroline, at least that we've seen. He hasn't really made an effort with them. And so, understandably, it makes sense why he feels like they don't talk to anybody, because he hasn't really tried to talk to them. And so there's some really fun conversation. There's some really great conversations going on here. Gabe does kind of talk about here, are there like two kinds of relations? There's like social and strategic, and that there needs to be, you know, they may not always align in that way. Caroline also brings up the fact that there's one person who knows what they're doing, and that it's Gabe, and that everyone knows. He has this great line where he says that he wants to be Indiana Jones. And then ultimately, TK, he does, I think, try to handle things in the best way here. He mentions that it wasn't really his intention to single anyone out. He wants to let everyone know that they can't be okay with losing, and he doesn't want them to be complacent. But again, I think the damage is done here. Like, you don't need to keep explaining what you meant by it. I think what TK needed to do is just say, I overreacted, I'm sorry, let's just try to move forward, let's just try to keep winning. Like, he needed to be more encouraging to his tribe, and I feel like that honestly is what could have saved him. I think if he would have come across in more of like, I was just, you know, really annoyed, I was just really because that's understandable. Like, if he had just said to his tribe that, like, yeah, I was just really annoyed that we lost, and I took it out on the wrong people, and I'm sorry about that, I think that honestly would have done him a lot of good. I think the fact that Andy in the last tribal was very honest about how he felt, and, you know, was kind of apologizing to his tribe, but also kind of rationalizing it, I think that's the way to go. I think here, TK is still trying to be like, well, we can't possibly feel this way about losing. We can't constantly, you know, be complacent. We have to have this mentality, and it's like, you can't tell your tribe how they are supposed to feel. You can't direct them into, you know, being on one accord. I know obviously you want to lead things, but if people are going to, you know, try to handle things in a more positive light, I don't really see what the issue is here. So again, I think TK just really need to recognize that bringing up any conversations surrounding this topic and constantly trying to justify it was really going to do more harm than good. But then we do get to the vote, and before we do get to the vote though, something does end up happening that was generally shocking here. As you know, Gabe has an idol. It's good for, I believe, 3 rounds, and he's kind of content with that. He's content with the fact that he has this idol. He can play it at any 3 rounds that he wants. He even told Sue that he wasn't playing to play the idol on her, and so you can imagine my surprise when Gabe, whose name has not been said at all, who was pretty squarely team let's vote out TK and seemed like he had at least 3 solid votes to save TK, ends up pulling out an idol and using it on himself? Like, I don't know what to make of this. Like, generally, I don't know what happened here. I don't know what got him to get to this point where he felt like he needed to use it. But I really just feel like this was, like, a really bad move. I don't understand why you would want to just waste your idol like that. You have it for 3 rounds. You don't know you're going back to tribal again. Hold on to it as long as you can, because for all you know, Tiyana and Kyle could team up against you and Sue. They could try to pull in Caroline, and it could be one of you going next round. So I just feel like this was a really bad move for Gabe. I don't really understand what he was thinking here. You can even see his tribe mates are really confused about it, and I don't anticipate this is going to go very well for him. I don't feel like Gabe is going to be in a great spot after this moment. So we'll come back to this, obviously, when we talk a little bit more about what's going to happen next week. But to say the least, this was an incredibly shocking move that I just don't understand the point of at all. But we do get to the actual vote count here, and again, there were a couple different ways that this could really go, but it ends up going in a little bit more of a straightforward way than I expected, with the vote being a 4-2, with TK ultimately leaving here. And yeah, I mean, I think that this makes a lot of sense. Tiyana was very hurt over what TK said. Really didn't do himself any favors to try to repair those relationships here, or try to acknowledge, what he said and how annoyed everybody was at it. Really didn't do a great job of trying to help himself. Kind of just made things worse. And so it just made sense for him to end up getting voted off here. He does talk about in his retrospective that, like, it was a great move and that he, understands why they went in the direction they did, but he's still constantly complaining about the fact that they don't want to win and that they're okay with it, and with him not there, they're not going to win. So again, I think he still doesn't really understand what he did wrong, and I feel like that's just the best way to describe TK, like giving my little, spiel about him here. I think the thing with TK is that he did have a lot of potential. I think TK could have honestly gone very far. He just didn't seem like he was a very adaptable player and didn't really want to adapt. He was content with the 4 that he had. He wanted those 4 to run the tribe. He didn't really care about maintaining other relationships with Sue and Caroline. Meanwhile, Gabe was putting in that work, and Gabe ended up outlasting him in that way. But then also the way he then tries to talk about Tiyana, who is smiling and, tries to constantly justify it. And even though he thinks he's apologizing to her, is still trying to justify why he said it, only making it worse for himself. I think that's honestly what hurt him. Like, the best way to describe what was his downfall is his ego, is how condescending he was, is the way he would talk about people, is the way he would talk about Sue, and how Sue isn't willing, doesn't have the ability to talk to people in the way that he does, and how nobody tried to talk to her. He just continued to worsen things for himself. And honestly, it's the kind of downfall that, like, I just get really excited to watch in Survivor. I love seeing somebody who is so overly confident that things are going to work out for them and really has no doubt whatsoever that this is the direction that things are going to go, only for all of it to crumble almost instantly, and them being able to do absolutely nothing about it because they themselves end up in this position. I mean, this is just peak Survivor, peak reality TV in general. Like, this is exactly the kind of vote out I like to see. I'm really interested to see where this tribe is going to go from this point forward. If you had told me that TK was going to be the person voted out, I definitely wouldn't have suspected that. But with the way he was behaving throughout this entire episode, and how he was just continuing to alienate everybody on his tribe and increasingly get worse and worse with his responses. It really wasn't too much of a surprise that he ended up going here. And really, again, I think the only person to really blame for it is himself. And that really is why by the end of this, he is in the position that he is. I mean, all that great work that he put in basically ends up destroying all of it just like in a couple days. Again, it's like, this is just peak reality TV. This is exactly the kind of thing that you get excited to see. I would say it sucks to see him go because I do think he had potential, but again, his ego, his just very condescending nature really wasn't about, and I really was kind of hoping for his downfall here. To see it all happen just in a matter of minutes like that, again, I think it's just exactly what we hope to see in shows like this, and I thought it was just a very satisfying moment, but also a very exciting moment for this tribe overall. So yeah, there's a lot to really get into moving forward. I think when it comes to this tribe, the Tuku tribe, there's a lot of things I'm interested in seeing now, because I think now we pretty much have an idea of where the dynamics are going to go. You have Sue, Caroline, and Gabe on one side, and then you have Tiyana and Kyle on the other. But I think that there definitely is a lot of overlap because of what Gabe just did. I think Gabe playing that idol on himself was a really stupid move, and I don't really think this is going to end up going very well for him. I don't think, if I'm Sue in that situation, what I'm thinking is, why didn't you play that idol on me? You knew I was going to be the one to get votes. You said you didn't want to play it on me. Why did you even decide to play it on yourself? You could have held on to it if I was getting votes again. If I'm Caroline, I'm probably upset about this. If I'm Tiyana, I'm upset because you're the one who pulled me into this. Well, no, Sue did the work as well, but like, Gabe was definitely trying to pull her in. Why did you end up going in that direction? So I really feel like Gabe is in a lot of hot water moving into the next tribal. We'll really have to see the direction that things end up going. I can't believe he already played his idol. This is the one idol so far that was good for more than one tribal, and he just completely wasted it. So yeah, I don't know what to make of these other idols, the one that Sam has or the one that the one that Sam has or the one that Rome has, but hopefully they are much more effective than what we saw here, because I don't think you could have had more of a waste of an idol, even if you tried in this moment, than he did here. I think this was probably the worst thing that he could have done, and I really don't think that this was the move at all. But I also wonder, like, what is this going to mean for Tiyana? Where does Tiyana really fit in at this point? Is she going to work closely with Kyle, or is she going to go more towards that Sue and Caroline of it all? Are they still going to be at the bottom? Are they going to be able to recover now? I think that this is just going to be a really interesting tribe to watch moving forward. I feel like TK was someone who was so controlling and in this like dominant position that now not having him there, it really makes it so this tribe could generally, it seemed like Gabe was going to be the one to replace him. Like, Gabe was going to be the one calling the shots. This is a great move. Everybody's on his side. But now that he's made this move, I mean, it really could go in any direction. It really could, but now that he's, played this idol for himself, now this really could end up going in any direction. So I'm really excited to see where that ends up going. When it comes to Gata, again, I think right now, that is the most interesting tribe to me. I really like the way that Sam is handling things, the fact that he has the idol and Andy doesn't suspect it, but he's also in good with Sierra, he's also in good with Anika, he's in good with Rachel, but he has this plan of wanting to vote one of them out. I'm just really not sure what direction he's going in here. The fact he has Andy on his side and doesn't want to vote him, I think is a really exciting idea. I like when we don't know who actually is going to be voted out. I think it keeps things exciting. A lot of the time with three tribes, it gets increasingly easier to tell who is going to be voted out, but at least when it comes to Gata, right now, I couldn't really tell you who that's going to be, because I think they've done a good job of just showcasing a little bit of everybody. The person I think we've seen the least of most likely is Anika, but I could also see it being Rachel for those exact same reasons. So I don't really know where they're going to end up going with this, but right now you have Sam and Sierra in such a good spot, Sam especially in a really amazing spot. Andy seems like he kind of has new life in the game with Sam by his side, and then Rachel and Anika, I don't really know what direction that they're going in at this point. I think one is someone that Andy generally wants to work with, and the other one Andy wants out of this. I think one is someone that Sam generally wants to work with, and the other brother is someone that Sam wants out of this game, and I don't really know what direction that's going to go. So we'll really just have to see the way that plays out. There was also a preview for next week's episode where like Anika outs the fact that she thinks Sam and Sierra are a couple, and I don't know what to make of that. I don't feel like it's going to hurt them. It most likely is going to end up hurting her. So I don't know what direction that's going in, but that should be really spicy. And I think there's some really interesting dynamics on that tribe. So again, just really intrigued to see what happens there. Again, it really is just Lavo that I'm just not feeling as invested in, because right now I just don't think we saw enough of them in this episode. You have the person that they want to vote out and is a consensus target, and you can't vote him out. But then where do they want to go beyond that? I don't feel like we're getting enough of an exploration of that. Genevieve and Sol, I know basically nothing about. Aysha, I know, is working with Teeny, but aside from that, I'm not sure. Teeny is pretty much like running the tribe, it seems. I think that they're in a really good spot, and it also seems like Rome is somewhat in a good spot, despite the fact that everybody wants to vote him off. And Kishan also seems like he's in a pretty good spot, playing this very like low-key game. But other than that, I just don't feel like I know enough about this tribe. I feel like this episode was very Tuku and Gotta heavy, that Lavo just really didn't end up getting the same treatment, and as a result really just ended up kind of falling by the wayside and not really getting enough in here. But other than that, I mean, I'm really liking this season a lot so far. I really am interested to see a lot of different dynamics going on here. What I really like, I think, is again just how unpredictable things have been. I would never have expected for TK to be voted off and then for John to be voted off. It's not going the direction that I thought. The people that normally would be picked off are not getting picked off because they're finding idols or they're finding ways to adapt and get into better positions. And I think that's just really exciting. I think that, I know a lot of people are sick of the three tribes, but I actually do think this season is finding a way to make that mechanic work a lot. And I really do like the way that it is, that they are factoring all of that into the season. I think the idol system is really cool. I think there's a lot of interesting dynamics going on. So yeah, overall, while like I said, there is some stuff that I wish we get a little bit more in depth with, particularly on the Lavo side, I am overall really liking this season, and I think this was just another really great episode, particularly with just such an exciting and flashy tribal that just really gets me hyped to see where things are going to be heading from here. Everything we get in this episode with Gata as well, there's just so many interesting dynamics going, there's just so many interesting potential developments going on here that I think could end up just making for such an entertaining season that I am very much hooked into. So overall, I thought this was another really great episode, and I am going to give this episode, Survivor 47, episode 2, epic boss girl move, an A-. But anyways, guys, in my review of this episode of Survivor 47, let me know what you guys saw of this season overall, left your thoughts in it. And of course, if you like this video, I have a ton of other content that I'm reviewing. I've reviewed other Survivor seasons as well as covering the rest of Big Brother 26. This week is kind of a snooze fest, and I'll get into that when the video ends up coming on Thursday, but just not really feeling it so far. I am covering Agatha All Along and the Penguin weekly. I haven't gotten my reviews out for those, admittedly, but they will be coming throughout the week, as well as finishing off my coverage of the second season of House of the Dragon. I know that's been a long time coming, and that's coming very soon, as well as a bunch of other movie and TV reviews. So if you like any of that stuff, definitely check out my channel and consider subscribing as well. Would love to have you be a part of that. But other than that, guys, for this video, let me know what you guys are thinking of the season overall. Would love to your thoughts on all of that. That's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you guys later. Okay, bye. Don't worry about your life.